build vulnerability management programs across a couple of companies, and I can say I've made a lot of mistakes, along the way. So I'm here to share my insights so you all don't make the same mistakes that I did. Before we delve deeper, let's define what's vulnerability management. Vulnerability management is a comprehensive approach involving people, processes, and tools. They're all aimed at identifying and assessing and mitigating vulnerabilities within your infrastructure. I know that sounds pretty broad, so let's scope this down a bit. Vulnerability management should include essentially all of your endpoints. So think of your operating systems, your cloud environments, your databases. Typically, most vulnerability management programs only include vulnerability scanners and patching the scanners, but I would also include your bug bounty, your pen tests, any internal findings. So essentially anything that has a bug, I would include this. The reason being is because you'll want to check the different scores across and see how this impacts, how the vulnerability exploit impacts your environment. So having it in one centralized place makes it a little bit easier to also then work with teams to get everything remediated. The ultimate goal of a vulnerability management program is to control the company's attack surface. It's not just about meeting compliance requirements, although that is important, but you want to make sure that you're demonstrating to your customers and your stakeholders and your regulatory bodies that you do care about security and protecting their information. If any of you are like me, you've probably gone on the Google machine or ChatGPT at some point and searched, how do I build a vulnerability management program? And came across a similar framework like this, where you step one, document all your assets. Step two, scan all of your assets for vulnerabilities. Step three, quantify that risk based on the vulnerabilities. Then just remediate, and then report out your findings and remediation efforts across your organization. Sounds easy enough, right? I did exactly this at a former employment. I had inherited a scanning tool. I then took the report, and then I was like, all right, so I'll just send the SLA policy to teams, and they'll go and remediate the vulns, right? Did not happen that way. So once I had the report, I was like, now what? How do I figure out who owns what? How do I get the teams to even remediate? How do I even know that this CVE, generic CVE score that says it's a critical vulnerability is actually critical for my environment? For example, you could have a library with a critical vulnerability and turns out it's not hitting any endpoint and therefore it's not critical for your environment. So you don't want your engineers wasting time remediating something that's pointless. I think the crucial step that's missing in all of this is what I like to call step zero, is knowing how your engineering teams operate and building that relationship between security and engineering. You can go out and buy all the tools and all the scanners, but if you don't know how, if you don't know the things that are impacting your software engineers in terms of feature development, it's not going to work effectively within their environment. So like I said, we can find all the vulnerabilities all day long, but if the developers who need to fix them are working against feature demands, then it feels like they're working against the security team, and it just becomes a battle. So to break down the silos, I would highly recommend attending their sprint planning meetings, understanding how their tools work, just learn to speak their language. Now, I know some of you all are probably thinking, oh, we're getting into scope creep here. But I'm not asking you to go figure out and solve all of engineering's problems. Work with them to see how you can help them help you. Are they spending a bunch of time on tech debt and fix-it weeks to delete dead code? Have you had a lot of code yellows because of, again, tech debt that hasn't been cleaned up? At Uber, we faced a number of security incidents caused by dead code. So our development team built a tool called Polyglot Piranha to help clean it up. Over 6 months, Piranha deleted 500,000 lines of code, which resulted in 1,800 PRs, and 90% of those PRs merged without any friction. To put this in perspective, that was like the effort of about 29 developers. Let's say you're paying those 29 developers $100,000 a year. That's $3 million in savings. And essentially, it helped us reduce our attack surface. Again, I spent less time having people delete or update libraries or figure out the critical risks when there's no dead code in the environment. Shameless plug here, I now work at Gitar, which is founded by some of the creators of Piranha. At Gitar, our first product is built on top of Piranha and has even greater capabilities to automate and create PRs that help clean up your stale feature flags. Key takeaway is help your developers automate their tech debt. This will greatly help and strengthen your vulnerability management efforts. In this phase, the first most critical task is conducting a thorough asset inventory. You can't protect what you don't know exists, right? What does this look like? Build a RACI chart, partner with your IT teams, do a CMDB to detail who owns what, create a lot of architecture diagrams where they don't exist, so you know the relationships between the dependencies. Once you have your assets documented, now comes a phase of identifying vulnerabilities. So in the identification process, this is defined by tools, like scanning tools. However, vulnerability scanners are just detection, they're not prevention. I would highly recommend figuring out how we can plug into your engineering workflows to prevent vulnerabilities before they even enter the environment. So what does that look like? I would say do automated scanning of your CI/CD pipeline. So before things are rolled out, they're tested before introducing new issues into your environment. Also detection, still keep it to the identification stage. Scanning tools, I'm not trying to bash scanning tools here. They are important. We just can't do much if we don't know what the dependencies are and what the impact to our environment is. As security professionals, we are inundated with so many scanners out there, so I'm not going to spend too much time here. But if you spend the time to do step 0 and step 1, you will, I trust that you'll be able to find the right tools for your environment and get past the noise. Again, you want something that works and fits within your current development workflows. When I inherited that tool at my former employer, it was not, it was definitely an uphill battle, and it became me against developers, and that's something you definitely want to avoid. Oh no. Here comes trouble. Next step for quantification. Now that you have your vulnerabilities, the question becomes, which ones do you fix first? This is where quantification of risk comes in place, and this is a critical step for efficient remediation. I want to emphasize efficient because, oh no.
She's a good friend. She's going from San Francisco, so cheers.
Cheers. Thank you. Woo. Oh man. That's a way one way to take the edge off. Like I was saying, this is where quantification risk comes in place, and it's a critical step. The key thing you want to remember here is quantifying the business risk, the business impact. You want to be able to, this is where programs and products like FAIR, the FAIR Institute and FAIR model come into place, because it really puts in a number, a dollar amount, the level of risk at your company and the frequency that it occurs. So I would highly dig deeper in here. This will help you in terms of getting things like just more attention and visibility. If a leader sees that you have, let's say, $100,000 that they could lose for not remediating something versus $2 million, I promise you will get more remediation efforts happening. Once vulnerabilities are prioritized, next step is patching. Your development team will be in charge of fixing the vulnerabilities, but security's role shouldn't end there. Work with your developers to make sure that any patches or changes are applied smoothly and easily. You don't want to roll out a patch that could essentially break something, because it just reinforces the idea that security is a pain. So again, plugging into automating into your CI/CD pipeline can really help in this instance. The final step of building a vulnerability management program is reporting. I would highly recommend doing 2 types of reporting. One audience is your engineering teams, and then the other for your leadership teams. For your engineering teams, you want to make sure that the reports are actionable, has detail on what the impact is for their teams and infrastructure. Additionally, you want to be able to give them enough detail so that they can figure out which ones they should and should not take action on. The leadership availability, you want to quantify the risk, and this is where the FAIR model, again, could come into place. Leaders care about the financial business impact of potential breaches. So rolling that up and just keeping it a little bit more high level versus detailed for your engineering teams. One thing I would also recommend is gamify it. Kind of praise engineers for doing the remediation efforts. Patching vulnerabilities is a little bit of grunt work, and it's not always the fun stuff, and they want to be recognized for the hard work that they're doing. And some companies, I had one company where security was a pillar for their performance evaluations, but I understand that's not common across multiple other organizations. So gamify. I put in a section in my monthly report that said, these are the top 10 teams that remediated the most vulnerabilities this month. And I always made sure to CC the CTO and CEO so that they're recognized. It's also a great way to inadvertently call out people that are not remediating. You don't have to call them out, but it kind of shows itself. So key takeaway, at the heart of an effective management program is it's the relationship between security teams and developers. We get so bogged down with scanning tools, and they are important, but they're just one piece of the puzzle. I've included a QR code for Gitar if you're interested in learning more. Feel free to follow me at Twitter, also, as Sarina says, but I will open the floor for questions. None? Was that great? Awesome. Thank you.